Hmm. Oh, there we go. All righty. There's some Kabbalistic terms that's good to get familiar with. There's a concept called or, which means light. And there's also something called shefa, a flow. Everything is orchestrated from heaven. It comes down as a light, a form of energy. It comes as a flow. The philosophers, the Jewish philosophers, use more the term shefa, which means flow, right? A divine flow, as opposed to the Kabbalists who use more the term or, light. What's the distinction between them? So by use of a metaphor, a great sage who wants to teach the student has to contract upon the flow of intelligence in order to make sure that the flow that comes from the teacher, the sage, is something that the student could digest, right? The teachings need to be bite-sized, digestible in the intelligence of the student, who is not as great a as the great sage. So the shefa needs to be, the flow needs to be contracted upon, which is in that metaphor, of flow, right? Flowing from this cup into another cup, from one's brain and intelligence to another person's, in brain and intelligence. So first of all, the idea of a flow means there's something that's going to be gone from here, lacking from here. It's one. Secondly, there's it's for for from this cup to flow into another cup, there's an effort made, um, and which we can't, which is a breakdown in that term when we refer to God. For God, there's no effort to flow from above, right? And it's not also flowing in a manner of, being removed from here and going somewhere else, also lacking in the metaphor, as opposed to light. Well, light comes from its source without effort. The sun shines, the light that emerges from it, there's not an effort of engagement, right? In the metaphor, we're right, as likewise from God, there's no effort that in the act of creation, the light that emerges from Him. And first and secondly, so it's automatic without effort. Um, so in the metaphor of the sun is also not a good metaphor. It breaks down. Why? Because the sun is automatic, that the ray of light that emerges from it. But from God, it's not automatic. It's based on His desire, His will, that emerges from Him, the light. And But the light is a sampling of where it comes from. So the light reflects its source and is a sampling of its source. That is true with God, who is the source of light, Ein Sof, and that light then is a sampling in the act of creation of God. But contracted, it's only a ray of light as opposed to the source of light, the sun, which is of course much greater, all the more so the infinite of God. Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you for Chabad Zich and Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We continue in our understanding of a beautiful metaphor of a mighty, mighty king comes as his noblemen, his servants, to a dunghill to take out a simple, a simpleton. Brings him into, and he himself, the king, takes him up from there personally, brings him to his palace, to the inner chamber, and takes care of him totally with great love and devotion, with an embrace and a kiss. So God does for the Jewish people. He took us out of our dunghill, Egypt. Yesterday we learned that that's not just collectively as a people, which of course, in the narrative, it's a collective going out of Egypt. But going out of Egypt means going out of your constraints, your restrictions, your limitations. God takes me personally out. Gives me the strength to go out of my personal limitations and my restrictions, that being the human condition. And therefore we say in the Shema every day about the oneness of God, that we're able to be sanctified through a mitzvah, that we are able to be betrothed, united with God, and sanctified to be beyond the human condition. Right? Beyond the human condition. Can you just let me know that online, YouTube and Facebook are working okay? Okay. Seems like, I don't know, it got frozen or what? Okay, guess it's okay. So he personally takes out of Egypt, meaning out of the limitations of the human condition, my personal limitations. That's what God does. We continue with this thought and bringing it to another deeper understanding. Now, when we think about God, we think about Ein, the blessed Ein Sof, the infinite of God. So, as his name is, so he is, without limit and end. Now, if God were to create a world, to create me and you, in a manner that he doesn't contract upon himself, then the light that would emerge would be an infinite light. And we would be simply bound up in one with God. Um, as a result. Meaning, if there wasn't a contraction, there was only what we call cause and effect. Cause and effect means the cause and the effect are linked together, right? They're linked together. They're bound with each other, right? I cause to pick up the cup. The effect is it's moved. They're linked. There has to be something here with this, right? I moved it. And my power is in it. In its movement, that's cause and effect. Then the effect would always be linked with the cause, and therefore we'd be of an infinite nature. We would be infinite through that act of creation. But that I'm now a limited person is because God contracts upon his infinite nature, right? In order to make space for me, make space for you, right? And therefore, we could appreciate and derive from the ray of that contraction of the divine, which is the Shekhinah, we can have a pleasure of that light of God, because we would not be able to derive a pleasure of the divine of an infinite order. We wouldn't be able to do that. But of a limited ray of divinity, we can appreciate it. We can enjoy that, right? Because God contracts upon his infinite nature. It's a very short class, and it's in the middle of the thought. So what does that mean exactly? That God, okay, we get the idea, but what's the point? I don't want to give the point now because it's really coming up. But let's just make the point simple. Actually, when we speak about contraction, versus cause and effect, we don't know what that means to contract on the infinite of something in order that there should be room for finite. But we do have an idea of contraction, that we put ourselves aside to make space for another. That idea we get, which is a divine quality. And think about it as a parent or as a person. When you make space for another, right, you contract upon yourself. That's an amazing quality. As opposed to cause and effect, that's natural for us. Because everything in our world is cause and effect. Think about it. So there's something outside of cause and effect. You breathe in, you breathe out. The breathing in causes you to breathe out. Mm-hmm. You think an idea, that idea gives you a feeling in the heart. It causes a feeling. That's why you should have good thoughts, so you cause good feelings. Words matter. Why? Because they have an effect, cause and effect. When you drive very fast in a area that's 30 kilometers and you're going 60, you can, first of all, cause getting a ticket. You can, when you crash at 60 kilometers, a lot more damage is done than when you crash at 30, right? In an equal scenario, obviously, right? Cause and effect. You overeat, you cause a certain effect. You eat properly, you cause a different effect, a healthier effect. All our world is cause and effect. What does God do, though? Um, he puts aside his infinite nature, Ein Sof, contracting upon it in order, in order that we can have a ray of light of him that we can experience, appreciate, enjoy it. At least in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. Here it's a little more challenging, but we can do that. All right. More to come. I'm not going to spoil the light. It's hard to spoil the light, though. Any questions, any comments, any thoughts? All right. More to come. We had a great Torah studies class last night. At least I really enjoyed it. I think others did too. They did. And TRC, Tanya Rabbi Community. Oh, we're having really good stuff going on. Oh, Chava just wrote. Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right, folks. Rambam coming up. Laws of marriage. The intricacies of the law. All right. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you for Chabad Zurich,